Okay, folks, I am proud this morning to be joined by three of our great New York freshman congressmen-elect who are going to do an amazing job for New York, for the country here. And on my left is Mondaire Jones, who represents the great county of Westchester. On my right is Richie Torres, who represents the great county of the Bronx. Manhattan, any Manhattan?
None.
Nope. The Bronx only. And on our Facebook is Jamal Bowman, who represents part of the Bronx and part of Westchester. And these are our three stars in our New York delegation. And we're here today for one reason. Student debt is just a huge burden on the shoulders of millions of New York students and tens of millions of Americans. And the bottom line is that college should be a ladder up, but student debt makes it an anchor down. For far too many students and graduate students, some years out of school, student loans and federal student loans are becoming a forever burden. They stand in the way of people getting the job they want. They stand in the way of buying a home, of starting a family, of buying a car, and they hurt our economy dramatically. Our schools here move mountains to work with students on maximizing aid and scholarship and doing what they can to keep their people out of debt, but the cost is too great. And here's the amazing thing. 93% of this debt is the federal government charging 7, 8, 9% to these wonderful students, who I'll introduce in a few minutes, and to 93% of all students. For the federal government to make a profit on the backs of our future, our young people, is just awful. 2.4 million New Yorkers owe almost $90 billion in student loans. New York City, Long Island, Westchester, and upstate, it affects everybody. The average New York City resident has more than $38,500 in debt. The average New York State student has $34,600 in debt. That is a burden that is far too great. Our number is higher than the national average. So what's the plan? Senator Elizabeth Warren and I, who are carrying this bill in the Senate, and Congressman-elect Jones, Torres, and Bowman in the House, we have come to the conclusion that the President Biden can undo this debt, can forgive $50,000 of debt the first day he becomes president. You don't need Congress. All you need is the flick of a pen. And President-elect Biden, then President Biden, can make this happen. That's what we are urging to do. We are urging him to choose a Secretary of Education who will do this too, because it's up to the Secretary of Education officially. But if President Biden wants it, I'm sure it will happen. As I said, this debt is a huge burden on the backs of our students, standing in the way of them and their economy, and it stays with them for a very long time. So, ahead of this new administration, the four of us are calling on President of the United States to take executive action to administratively cancel up to $50,000 in student loan debt for federal student loan borrowers. And he can also make it such that when they do this, they have no tax liability. So when they get this so-called forgiveness from the federal government, they don't have to. We're working with Senator Warren. She and I were the original pushers in the Senate, and the three lead sponsors in the House of this resolution will be the two gentlemen standing on my left and right, and the virtual gentleman, Mr. Bowman, who is right there. Let me just say a few other things about this. This would be an amazing start to the Biden administration if they were to do this. And it affects so many Americans, particularly black and brown families who have been crushed by debt. Listen to this. Black and Latinx students are more likely to borrow money to go to college. They borrow more money while in college and have a harder time paying it off. With a stroke of a pen, it is estimated that the Biden-Harris can undo this huge wealth gap between black, Latinx, and white. It would reduce, just one flick of a pen could reduce 25% of the wealth gap between blacks and whites, and 27% of the wealth gap between white and Latinx brown. The Federal Reserve says this would be a huge shot in the arm to the economy, because when the kids don't have to pay debt to the federal government, they can buy a car, buy a home, shop at the stores, create a family. All kinds of things that would make a huge, huge difference. 2018 data from the Fed, I gave you those numbers. Let's see. Now, you're a young person. When I talk to so many people in their 20s and 30s, they're putting off all their decisions, family, job, home, because of this huge burden. Let's get rid of it. Let's let them breathe a sigh of relief and get on with their lives without an inordinate amount of student debt. Over 100 civil rights, community, consumer, and student advocacy organizations support this. Here in New York, it would affect, as I said, a huge number of people. 58% of our students in New York graduate with considerable debt. 58%.